Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1111, Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2. Usually, I think when Mystery Science Theater has done sequels before, but they would do two, but never two in a row. But that was when releases were different. Now it's on Netflix, so they're going to do two in a row. So we're getting both of the Roger Corman produced masterpieces of the Wizard of the Lost Kingdom films in a row. The previous one was so successful that apparently the same quote from Ed Naha, I guess, or as he's credited as Tom Edwards in the first Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, saying that apparently he was at a wedding reception 3 years later from the original Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, and Roger Corman told him that the film was very successful on video and that they filmed a sequel. Notice he didn't say they made a sequel, which is interesting turn of phrase. I also would like to point out that apparently RiffTrax did do a riff on the original Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, which I didn't know when I did the original, but I can't see if they did the second one. Sometimes there's ones that RiffTrax has done and Cinematic Titanic's done and Mystery Science Theater has done. Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, the original, was one where two of them had done it. The first one, at least. They didn't do the second one. You can understand the first one, I think, makes a very riffable movie. It's definitely in that kind of Spielbergy kind of Cry Wilderness vein that I think works so well for Mystery Science Theater 3000 and riffing, but Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2 is kind of a lot worse, both in terms of riffing, and the movie itself is a lot worse though. Riffing is good, but I think this is kind of an interesting episode in that every host segment is very memorable. They did such a good job with all of them, from the Invention Exchange, from the cold open, to all the host segments really was what I liked most about it. And there are people who just like the riffs and don't like the host segments, and this is an episode, I'd say, where the host segments are almost stronger than the riffs. Now they have a lot of fun with it. They have Crow playing fetch with Jonah, and then a different Crow coming back. They have Servo doing a bunch of different funny things, and they do, I don't think it's the worst episode or anything like that. I just wasn't as into it. I never was laughing as much, but the host segments I love. I love the idea that it's a rainy day, and that doesn't make any sense, and they're kind of just with it, because obviously it's not going to rain in space or on Moon 14 or something like that. And I thought that was actually a really funny kind of idea, like taking those surreal elements that, like, you know it's not raining, you know that's not happening, but they did it anyway, and they stuck with it, and they kind of almost notice how ridiculous it is, but don't break from it as well, which was interesting. Even the Invention Exchange with punt bunnies and GIFs notes, or GIFs notes, whatever you want to call it. I thought that was a funny idea with emojis and things like that, which is not as much funny now that we have the Emoji Movie, but I still thought that was funny. The movie itself has nothing to do with Wizards of the Lost Kingdom. It's basically a sequel in name only. I don't even think anyone beyond Roger Corman had anything to do with both films, really. Maybe like a AD or something, if someone wants to do a deep IMDb dive on that one. I didn't notice any similarities in cast or anything. It's funny because I think the riffs try to, in the theater, Jonah and the Bots try to give it some sort of a connection, which is kind of funny. You could theoretically watch this before having seen one, but you're gonna miss jokes. So I guess you're going to see the movie itself. You could theoretically do that, but you could also watch it and not be too lost. I don't think, but I think you would then want to rewatch it again after you'd seen the Mystery Science Theater episode, because they do things with Galfax, and which they have a pretty good joke, and they keep bringing up certain things. And I guess this is sort of the same model, but not really. I mean, it's like a guy and a kid who's being a wizard and stuff. I mean, it would have been fine if they were like loosely connected. I don't know. It sort of probably doesn't matter. These were basically selling because of the box art. That's probably why people were like, oh, because I don't know if these got theatrical releases then. At that time, I think he was doing them in small theaters, but I think most people were seeing these on VHS. And if you saw, you know, the covers that are going to be on the screen right now, you probably go, oh shit, I'll watch that. And then you went home and you go, oh shit, I watched that? Hey, that's how Roger Corman makes his money, man. Roger Corman's an interesting producer in that I think, like, Sandy Frank probably is a little more notorious, but I think Roger Corman's probably supplied Mystery Science Theater with more movies than anyone. He's probably been involved with more. I don't know if that's for real, but I feel like that's probably true. Although I find him to be a really interesting producer, and at the beginning of his career he made some cool stuff, particularly Bucket of Blood. But because he was good at financing films and making cheap films, but making shitty films, Mystery Science Theater is definitely going to come to him. It was cool seeing Sid Haig in this, who I don't think they made a reference. I don't remember a joke about him. He wasn't in it a lot, but I kept wondering, like, how can you not say something about Sid Haig? I feel like there wasn't a good riff. You know, with Mystery Science Science Theater, like, you feel like you miss a joke. I feel like I missed a joke. Like, I'm so in disbelief. I didn't really hear a Sid Haig joke. Unless they pick, like, an obscure Sid Haig movie or something like that. David Carradine, I think, is probably the most charismatic person in this movie. Not that that's saying anything. And the girl in it, I guess, was trying to take place of the guy, Bo Svensson or whatever, from the last one, or whatever his name was. See, that was like a week ago. I can't even remember that shit. But I like that you must be a redneck, you must be a bad wizard, or you must be an incompetent wizard. I thought that was actually a pretty funny riff, and I feel like a perfect joke for like 90s nostalgia, because I don't know if anyone who's younger than me even remembers You Might Be a Redneck. Do people still remember? I don't think people remember that. Also, I love seeing Mary Jo Pehl, Kevin Murphy, and Bill Corbett, who also wrote on this episode. I saw he was in the writing credits for this one, which I'm assuming again, I think I've mentioned this in previous reviews, I'm assuming that means he helped do the riffs, but he might have helped write the host segment also, but I think he helped write some riffs also. But anyway, about Kinga putting forth her evil plan to have a baby with Jonah without his consent, which is super creepy. Kind of reminds me of the joke where it's like, you know, if our genders were reversed, no one would be okay with this, or something like that, which is kind of like a normal kind of 2017 thing to say, but it's still true and a little funny. I'm curious where that's going to go. It certainly like planted a little seed in there. Oh, I didn't mean that the way I've heard through podcasts that there's a cliffhanger. As I'm watching these one at a time, I haven't gotten to the end, so I don't know what that would be, but that is curious that they would. I think that might be a little like too far. Like, that's a little too far, right? Oh man, the director of this did do A Bucket of Blood from 1959 and the remake in 1995. Oh shit, I didn't know that. He did the original Little Shop of Horrors, the original Bucket of Blood, Death Race 2000. Holy shit, this guy's done a lot of stuff. It Conquered the World, is that? Oh no, he's the writer. Still, he helped write Bucket of Blood and Little Shop of Horrors, so I think that's worth something. Although he directed not as good movies, I guess. Oh well, whatever. I don't love this episode, but I certainly like it. I think it was interesting how good the host segments were and how much better they were. How much more I liked them than almost the riffing in the episode. I didn't think was as great. And I wasn't really as into the riffing. I didn't think it was as funny as the first Wizards of the Lost Kingdom. Maybe it's because, I mean, I was like primed to like this. I liked the previous one a lot. I think it's also the movie's not as fun to see them make fun of. It's just like a really painful movie, and I think there's too much deep hurting almost. And I noticed, like, when I've gone through people ranking episodes and something, it's not one that anyone seems to have a lot of affinity for, and I think it's kind of one that we can split hairs on. I know people probably like Time Travelers a lot more than me and stuff, but I can understand why this one sort of gets disregarded, but I think it has enough funny host segments that it's worth it. There were honestly no host segments in this that I felt were lesser or made me go, oh, I don't, you know, I can tell they filmed this in a day. I never felt that way. This is probably, host segment wise, one of the most solid episodes through and through. More consistent in terms of quality. I feel like in most of them, there's always one that I'm like, oh, this is like, they did this in one take or something. It doesn't have the energy, but each one, even the last one where they talk about various movies that they would have liked to have watched over Wizards of the Lost Kingdom too, and I like that Patton Oswalt was like, thank God it's not a trilogy. I guess fantasy wasn't as big. I know Roger Corman will do film franchises until they're completely not profitable, so I guess this was not as big of a hit. I would say this is a good one. It's not an incredible one. It's not so bad you need to take a break from this. Like, really, I still feel like they do a good enough job. I'm a little apprehensive about the Kinga Jonah thing right now in terms of when I'm watching them, but I am curious where that's going to go and how funny it could be. I like seeing Bill Corbett, Mary Jo Pehl, and Kevin Murphy. Again, I think it's cool that the people from the Sci-Fi Channel thing are making cameos and keep making cameos. I hope that continues whenever season 12 is announced, or if it's announced, I hope that continues. I think that's cool having that continuity. I like that they want like nothing to do with that. Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2 is definitely a memorable Mystery Science Theater episode. I don't think it's one of the better ones of the new season, but it's one that I quite enjoy, and I'll probably remember Punt Bunnies and the cameos and the Rainy Day sketch. I really liked all the sketches and host segments throughout it. I think this is probably a case for saying how good the host segments can be and how strong they can be, particularly in this season. That's almost pretty much why I like this episode, was almost more the host segments than the riffs, which says a lot about the performers doing them and how well they've done this season so far. So if you have seen Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1111, Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.